Cattle were never in factories. Factory farming of milk or dairy was never a part of the traditional way of treating cattle. I googled organic farming because that was the only thing I was clear about, that I want to do farming without chemicals. Then I realized I need cows because I needed cow dung. So I said, how lovely, let's have a cow. So a cow followed the horse, and it was not one. Today we have about 150 cattle, but we are not a dairy. Every cow produces 10 kilos of dung all its life, every single day. And then we started making a variety of products. Like you said, I Googled and discovered this world of dung products, and also started agriculture using cow dung.
Welcome to Mindful Businesses, presented by Sarani, and I'm your host, Vidya Iyer. In our podcast, we bring to you brands which are mindful in their practices and processes. A mindful business adopts and employs sustainable social, economic, and environmental practices. Today, we have with us Aparna Rajagopal, founder of Beejom, Regenerative Sustainable Agriculture. She joins us from Western Uttar Pradesh, India. Welcome, Aparna.
Hi, Vidya.
So good to connect with you.
Thanks so much for having me on the podcast.
The breeds of cows in India are easily distinguished from their Western counterparts, such as the Jersey and Holstein, by their hump on the back. Broadly speaking, how many breeds of cows are indigenous to the Indian subcontinent?
Would have had over more than 100 breeds of cows earlier. I wouldn't know the exact number for sure. As of today, even though many breeds have gone extinct, we have about 45-50 breeds left. So we've lost a lot of our cattle diversity across India. And India is a small country that packs a large punch, because we actually have so many geographical regions in India. Whether it's if you see, it's so beautiful. We have the Himalayas on the north, and then huge coastal region down south. We also have the Deccan Plateau, we have the Thar Desert, we have the Ghats down south, we have rainforests. So the cows breeds that are seen are the cattle breeds are all adapted to those particular geographical conditions. We have, for instance, dwarf cows, cattle.
Is that the Vechur cow?
The Vechur, Malnad, there are many breeds actually, but down south, the Malnad Gidda and Vechur, Kasargod, they are all the small breeds on the Western Ghats. Mountainous regions, because they have to be fleet-footed, swift, and they have to be nimble more than anything else. So they are really small, light cattle. Their hooves are pointed so that they can easily climb. Similarly, we have the Tharparkar, which is a desert cow. The cow belongs to the Thar Desert, which is why it's called the Tharparkar. It's a cow that is known to be like the camel amongst cows, where it can, with very little water and in adverse conditions, can continue to give milk. And they're very hardy and sturdy. There are draught cattle, there are dwarf cattle, there are milch cattle. Some cattle just give a lot of milk. Some are not great with milk, but for draught purposes. So that's how the cattle diversity is across India. It's unfortunate, but we've lost a large part of that diversity already.
The cattle traditionally were part of the family. I remember my father, who grew up in a village in Kerala, he would have names for his cows, and he would refer to them as a family member. That is also the unique way in which cows are treated in India.
Yeah. Cattle were never in factories. Factory farming of milk or dairy was never a part of the traditional way of treating cattle. In fact, as everybody knows, cattle are worshipped and revered in our country, and that is with a purpose. It was more than mythology. It was actually just because of the great use. It's quite interesting how Vedic culture, they just worshipped anything that was very useful, like the banana, the coconut, the cow, because all this gave people a lot. As far as the banana is concerned, it was all parts of the banana tree. Similarly, coconuts. And then the bulls were used for plowing. The cows gave milk. They used the dung that was generated at home naturally for various purposes, from house building, using it as fuel in cooking, and of course agriculture. That is why the cattle, it's not just the cow. Cattle became the fulcrum of Indian village existence. Every family had bulls and cows, because they would use the bulls to plow their field. And traditionally, actually, the bulls were even bigger place than a cow, because they would pull carts. That was the only mode of transport transportation at that time, and they would plow, and they would run oil mills, they would run all the flour mills, the oil mills. The cattle were used so much in daily life that they couldn't have done without, whether it was the bullock or the cow. And everything was also very sustainably organized in a village setting.
It was more circular though.
There was a symbiotic relationship. The cow gave them a lot, cattle gave them a lot, and in return, if any grain they grew, they would keep the hay for their cattle.
Right.
The cattle would give dung and work and give milk, and so there was a give and take, which is why the cattle were family. Whether it was the bull or the cow, they were part of family. And because the cattle worked for you and as were part of your family, they had names, they virtually lived in your homestead. Even when they passed on, they were given a lot of respect. They were not, treating them cruelly became a sin. So I think also morality evolved around cattle because of this. So it's a very beautiful evolution of how civilizations would have grown from domesticating cattle, how cattle became integral to our communities. Therefore, misusing them or treating them with greed or disrespect was actually, people didn't do that.
Whenever my family and we go back to India, we enjoy the fact that the cows roam freely. Most tourists are fascinated. And obviously, the cows, they will inbreed between different breeds because they are not kept confined. There are no restrictions to where they move. Most of these breeds are often naturally crossbred. As against the Jersey, the Holstein. The Jersey in particular, I think there was a ban on any other cows coming over when they first decided to breed it as a pure breed. So if you compare the Indian breeds have far more diversity as against the cattle till in the West.
No. I'll tell you what actually happened was the Indian breeds did not crossbreed for a long time because every cow had its own region virtually. Every species, breed of cattle. So you would find Tharparkars in Rajasthan. They won't crossbreed with a Vechur because Vechur was way down south. Let me go a little further back. Immediately after independence, maybe about the time of the 50s, India went through a lot of famine. And the government decided to get aggressive with agriculture because they realized we're not producing maybe enough food for the burgeoning, population. And our traditional practices produce lovely, clean, diverse food. But they wanted to produce more so that not only could we feed our own population, so that we could also export, build agricultural economy. So they started something called the Green Revolution. The Green Revolution meant we imported seeds, we imported pesticides and fertilizers, and these were for the first time introduced to hybrid seeds, and chemical fertilizers were introduced into Indian agriculture with subsidies and etc.
As early as the 50s?
60s. As a parallel, they also introduced something called the Milk Revolution, that is the White Revolution. And that's how Amul was set up, the first cooperative, right? The agenda of that was to build village economy using dairy. Then they realized that the Indian cattle, they are indigenous cattle, and the Jersey cow gives 20-25 liters of milk, while the indigenous Indian cow, the average output of milk is only 4 to 6 liters, right? Now, and the dwarf cattle won't even give you that much. It's 1.5-2 liters. So they realized that the White Revolution cannot take off with Indian cattle the way they wanted it to, because the sheer output of the milk of the cattle was so, according to them, low. So that's how they imported and brought in Jersey and Holstein Friesian cows from abroad into India.
So basically, the Indian cow was meant for one family.
Meant for the local community. It is also how we ate then.
Right.
Being a tropical country, we never loaded on dairy because usually in India, we eat light sattvic meals. And the reason why we eat light sattvic meals is because it's really hot. And traditionally, the milk was according to availability. So even today, if you go to a village home, they're very likely to tell you, we don't have milk at home, we'll give you black coffee or black tea. It's very common, So people actually adjusted with, depending on the milk they actually had. So if your cow had given birth and you had milk in your house, it was great. If you didn't have, people managed with black coffee or black tea, or similarly, especially down south, I can speak because I've heard this from my mother, yogurt or thick curd was a luxury. And also from the Ayurvedic point of view, curd was considered to be bad for people with certain body types.
Right, right.
Yogurt or dairy was not encouraged. So people ate according to body type, people ate according to season, and generally the food patterns were very, very simple food. I think, we didn't eat yogurt, shakes, ice creams, cheese. The way we eat today has changed so much. So the demands for milk is so much greater today, and even mithai, mithai would be made at home.
Sweets.
Yeah, and a lot of the mithai was made with jaggery down south, not dairy. Now everything has changed. The way we eat has changed. There's a fast food industry that's demanding dairy. The large-scale commercial sweet shops that are demanding dairy. So the way we celebrate a festival has become so commercial. So I think as sociologically, this has had an impact on cattle and milk and everything. So that's how the Holstein Friesian and Jersey came into India. They were imported. They continue to be brought in actually. And villagers were encouraged to buy this cow because they said, look at this desi cow. It can only give you 4 or 5 liters of milk. Look at this cow. It can give you so much milk. A lot of dairies mushroomed during that period. A lot of native cattle were abandoned and slaughterhouses were increased because all the abandoned native cattle that's when we did lose a lot of our cattle diversity. And the milk revolution took off really well. And it was actually one of the it's today become a very, a model kind of program, which is taught across business schools in the country. So it came with its problems. It came with the fact that people would bring in jerseys and leave them to graze. All our cattle started getting crossed with other gene pools, you see.
Wow.
And that's how a lot of cattle got crossed also. And there is a terminology for such cattle in Western UP. It's called dogli. Dogli means crossbred. And in fact, people started deliberately crossbreeding also because they said, Acha, now Desi only gives you 4 liters or 5 liters. You cross it with the Jersey, it will at least give you 15.
And when you say Desi, you mean the indigenous breed?
Indigenous breed, yeah. The indigenous breeds of cattle. So people didn't mind them crossing at that point, not realizing the large-scale impact that's going to have in the long term, how our indigenous cattle diversity can get corrupted.
And from being like household family members, now they are, with the industrialized farming, they almost become like commodities, like I've gone to a local dairy farm here, which is very well run in Indiana. The cows literally go on a conveyor belt to be milked. So let's talk about your journey. You are a lawyer. What kind of a lawyer are you?
I graduated from law school. I was always interested in environment and animal rights. So I think I have always worked in those areas from the start. I left law as a profession 3-4 years after I finished law school because I clearly realized that I prefer an outdoor life and I couldn't see myself behind a pile of files, really. The other thing that I did realize that to make an impact, there was so much groundwork that was actually required before we brought in it's not like India doesn't have laws. In fact, some of the best laws in the world. And I think where we actually need more work is implementation, awareness, and getting people to understand the basic things like compassion. Environment protection. I really did want to work much more in that space. And I felt I could use my legal education, to do that. I did a lot of things in the middle. I did drift a little because I couldn't find the space I was looking for to work.
What were the other things that you did before you landed on this?
Yeah, so I worked with some organizations. I did a lot of rescue work on my own, which I continue to do. We do it as a family. I mean, we've always rescued cows or dogs or any animal that we find. And now we are part of this local network of animal rescuers and activists. So it's great because we all call each other if there's an animal, help rescue, send it to a shelter, or help rehabilitate or rehome a dog or a cat or rescue an injured cow. So we've been doing that for years. I do classical music. That's why I said I drifted off to do some of those things for a while. But it would always bother me. I used to think that every day I rescue animals. I rescue cattle and dogs and cats. But just rescuing them and sending them to shelters is not the solution to the real problem. Yeah, that's damage control. But what is the solution? And it used to rankle me. And of course, I didn't have one. Then 6 years ago, there was a horse that came up for rescue. And my friend in the shelter, she runs the shelter. She said, why don't you take a horse? We have so many horses, and I don't know why. There were retired polo horses, retired police horses, horses that were found abandoned. But I live in an urban home. So it was quite a random request from her. And I said, where am I going to keep a horse? I live in a city. But the idea kind of got in our heads. Our kids used to go to learn to ride. My husband and I thought, hey, why don't we adopt this horse and maybe look after it ourselves? But where? Where would we keep the horse? And then somebody mentioned to us that where I live, it's the capital of India. It's New Delhi. And I live in a suburb called Noida, which is in Western Uttar Pradesh. It's called the National Capital Region, this whole region, because Delhi is fringed by various states. It's fringed on one side by Haryana and the other side by UP. I live in Uttar Pradesh. There's the Yamuna River that flows between Delhi and UP. And somebody told me, go to the riverside and there are lots of land and maybe you could pick up, lease out a small patch for your horse and board the horse there and stuff. So we just trotted off one weekend with this random crazy idea of saying, let's board a horse by ourselves. We had no experience or clue. And when we landed up there, we realized that all the villagers there have taken small jobs in cities. And so their lands lie vacant and given away in lease to migrant farmers and stuff. So when we asked for a small piece of land, he showed us a whole land leading up to the Yamuna. It's quite a large patch. And he said, why don't you just take the whole thing? Why are you taking just a piece? We looked at him and said, what are we going to do with it? I mean, we just want to board one horse. He said, you do farming or do whatever you want. You can grow. So that sounded equally bizarre because we weren't growing anything until then. But, we thought, what an idea, why not? And since we were taking it on lease, we said, let's take it for a year and see what happens. Technically, it was a very, very kind of a bizarre idea on our part to have taken the land. But now we are in our 7th year and it's kind of mushroomed into quite a lovely farm with lots of, it's an animal sanctuary. It's got also a cattle preservation center. So the animal sanctuary has all kinds of animals. We have a donkey, we have pig, we have geese, we have goats, we have ducks, rabbits. Then we also have the cattle preservation center because when I started to grow, I really had to start from the drawing board. So I Googled organic farming because that was the only thing I was clear about, that I want to do farming without chemicals. Then I realized I need cows because I needed cow dung. So I said, how lovely, let's have a cow. So a cow followed the horse and it was not one. Today we have about 150 cattle. We started in 2014, August, a really crazy journey for us. So from knowing nothing, now we teach cattle rearing and maintaining a cow shed, and we have farmers. It's also an agricultural enterprise. We grow a lot of food. We ended up leasing more land, and now we have our own land. We concentrate on cattle breeding, that is animal husbandry. And breeding, why? Because these cattle are going extinct. Also, what is interesting is we have 150 cattle, but we are not a dairy.
Right.
Very early on, because of the work that I did with animal rescue, I realized that one of the biggest problems, both for the animals and for human health, is factory farming.
So you said you don't have the cattle for dairy.
Yeah.
Why was that important for you?
It was very important for me because dairy is a very, very exploitative space, especially when you do it as a business, in large scale. Like I mentioned earlier, it was sustainable. It was the farmer, the family. The consumption was also so, local and localized. So, and the demands were so little on the cow. So it was not cruel, But now the cow is just standing in a stall, giving milk, and they're pumping her with antibiotics, not allowing her to meet her child, and the male cattle are all abandoned. It's very, very cruel. The cows don't get any milk because there's ROI attached to that whole enterprise, and so the cow is constantly kept pregnant. Like you mentioned, the very way you saw the conveyor belt. Everything is mechanized in a dairy, so the cow exists only to give you milk. She doesn't have any other life. There is no other life. She maybe never treads on grass. Doesn't even know what a field is. It's like a prison. It's terrible. Once I realized that all these cattle breeds are vanishing and we could do so much to protect that biodiversity, just as we do seeds, just as we do plant varieties. So across the world, actually, this is a problem which I don't know how many countries are recognizing. We always talk about conservation of wildlife and habitat, and we don't talk about conservation of domestic cattle, of domestic animals. Indigenous dog breeds, indigenous. Every country has their own diversity. That's the beauty of this world. So then I was very clear. I said, listen, this cannot be. But then what? That was so if you have so much cattle, then what? I mean, you can't just keep cattle for nothing. How can you show this as a model? So the idea started germinating in my head about what am I going to do to showcase this alternative model? And then I said, hey, there's so much dung going on here. Every cow produces 10 kilos of dung all its life, every single day. Also, the dung isn't seasonal. It's not only when the cow has a calf. I mean, both the male and the female produce dung. So I just thought, hey, this is a great project. So why don't we start something with dung?
Right.
Only 7 years ago, I didn't know how. So I started to Google. I Googled pretty much everything, including that. And then to my great surprise, I discovered there are many innovations in India already, but in corners and pockets where it's not being recognized, or maybe somebody thought it's just a bad idea or didn't understand how to apply it. These were all inventions by local farmers, not engineers. I think, curious, technologically inclined farmers, So there's one guy who made this thing, a dung pot machine, which is a manual machine with which you can make dung pots. And then I discovered another machine with 1 HP motor, which makes dung logs.
So what's fascinating about your company is that you are tackling two problems. One, to rescue the animals and use them on your sustainable regenerative farm. And the byproduct, the dung that they produce, you're using it to create very innovative, sustainable products, which you just mentioned that you found on the web by Googling.
The whole farm, I think, was set up Googling because I didn't know anything, honestly. Frankly, we were city folk who, it's not like we had a tradition with farming. My father was a doctor and my husband's father was an executive. So there was no farming background. So we had to start really from scratch. So I went onto the farm. I sat on a rickety charpoy, which is
like a 4-post coir rope.
A coir rope bed, which was lent to me by a lady who thought I was nuts because it was August, it was really hot, and here I was with an iPad and a phone and my little internet thing and a dongle, and I was, saying, what is farming? How do you raise a cow? Because I didn't have the faintest idea. But then that's how Googling, I realized that you can do so much with dung.
Right.
That is why dung was, interestingly in India, I must bring it in here. Everyone worships the cow, right? Very early on, the ancient sages realized that there is more value in dung than milk. So I took a clue from that and I said, come, let's do this. And then we started making a variety of products. Like you said, I Googled and discovered this world of dung products, and also started agriculture using cow dung as the main raw material for the fields. It was beautiful how the project evolved. I didn't know how to select a field or anything. I just took any field somebody gave me to grow food, right? I had no idea what soil should look like or what soil should be like. But in fact, what I had inherited was a crazy patch of agricultural land. It was not soil. It was actually just like ash.
Wow.
There was absolutely no organic matter in that soil for some reason. And after years of chemical agriculture, it was really dead soil. Then as I started Googling, I discovered there are many types of agriculture.
Of course.
Types of organic agriculture, right? And there's permaculture, there's biodynamic farming. And there was also these people in India, we have something called Vriksha Ayurveda, which is Vedic preparations, using Vedic preparations, herbal concoctions, farming with using all that. So there were some people who had put up a lot of these recipes on the net. And I used that to make a cow dung slurry, which is actually a microbiological exercise where you build microbial activity in the soil. So that's the first thing we made. I got myself a drum, a wooden stick, and all the locals thought I'm mad because they are heavily into mechanized chemical agriculture. And they suddenly found this very urban person who came in a car with a drum and a stick and lots of cow dung, mixing a slurry. They told me, you don't know what you're doing. You'll need to use chemicals. And I honestly wasn't sure what I'm doing. I basically realized that I want to try this. Over the last 7 years, we've done a lot of soil inoculation with this slurry. And that fly ash has just become absolutely chocolate colored, beautiful soil. Therefore, the tagline for my organization, which grew into an organization that is today, became Growing Soil, Changing Minds. That's why it's sustainable regenerative agriculture. We realize the importance of cow dung in regenerating soil matter. Also, in growing clean food, the fundamental requirement is good soil. So that's how that evolved. Then we also started making stuff.
So what are the products that Beejom makes? What is your pet product? Tell me.
My pet product are the cow dung logs. Cow dung logs are beautiful. They're about 2-3 feet long. You can see the video on our Facebook page. It's a very simple machine which anyone can run. So it has a cone-like structure where you put in the cow dung and a log comes out. It's that simple. So these logs are sun-dried. So therefore, there's no carbon footprint on these logs actually. And we have about 1,800 kilos of dung produced every day. Automatically, we started making these logs. Then everybody used to come and ask us, how do they perform? Where are they used? So you can use them in cremations, you could use them in bonfires, or you could use them in barbecue ovens.
So you can use it for the pujas.
You could use them in cremations because in India, the most popular way of doing the last rites for a person is cremation. So therefore, if you go to an average crematorium in India, you'll see piles and piles of wood. I thought this is such a beautiful way to stop cutting trees, or at least reduce cutting trees. And even incinerators or electric crematorium, even that has a huge carbon footprint. So I said, hey, here's this project that creates economy for farming communities, because when they make these logs and sell, they earn. Give people an alternative to cutting trees. You save trees. And 3, the carbon footprint is minimum.
But the cow patties, the dry patties, were always used as fuel in traditional Indian households.
Yes.
How is your log different?
So very interestingly, all these questions came up before us, and because we didn't have a scientific understanding of this, just at that time, IIT Delhi came to us. Indian Institute of Technology, Delhi, the students came to us with their project, and they said, can we do a project on dung? And I was so happy, because an opportunity presented itself for us to do a study. I really wanted a study.
What did you want to study?
I wanted to study the dung log's efficacy versus wood, because that was often the question that was asked to me, saying how would it perform, versus wood.
True.
So they did this study. It went on for a few months. They even cremated an unclaimed body using this with the help of the government. The results were remarkable. The dung logs burn for a much longer time, slowly. So they consume less fuel. They also burn evenly because of the hole in the center. They have prepared a paper on this.
What about the smoke? How does it compare to wood?
Definitely there is pollution when you burn anything. That includes dung logs. Okay. But culturally, dung smoke is not considered for some reason to be polluting. And logically, I think any smoke is polluting. That's the truth. Even an incinerator produces its own smoke. So amongst the 3 ways of, maybe cremation, this would be still the most sustainable way to do that.
You said you found this innovation online of this person who he was making planters out of dung?
No, he was not making. He made a machine that can make dung pots. So I sourced him and I asked him if he could sell a machine to me. And so I got the machine. It makes 3 sizes of dung pots. And it also has a very interesting application. If you go to any plant nursery, most of the plants saplings are grown in small black polythene, at least in India, in small black polythene bags or plastic pots. And so there's a lot of plastic waste actually generated by nurseries who grow saplings. Even farmers, when they grow saplings, use black polythene covers here in India. This is a wonderful alternative because these dung pots can hold a sapling beautifully until it is ready to be transplanted. And when you transplant, you can plant it with the pot because the pot itself is manure, right? Also, there is a culture in India of gifting tulsis, basil plants on good occasions to people on a function or a festival. So we started encouraging green gifts for people, saying if you do want to gift somebody a pot, then gift them this.
That's a pretty creative and innovative product. When I looked online, your products, they seem pretty fragile. How do you transport it? Would it need a lot of packaging or?
We mostly work very locally, that's why. Because I feel large scale transportation also is a carbon footprint. What we actually encourage is for people to set up these wherever people can and avail it locally, because definitely it reduces the risk of breakage, and it's also less cumbersome to transport far off places. So yes, it is fragile. It can break because it's after all made with cow dung. Having said that, we have managed to send it across the country to many places. Not the logs. I don't transport the logs very far. Instead what we do is we train people and help them buy the machines wherever they are.
Right.
That's ideally what we want to do, because there are a number of goshalas or cattle shelters in our country, and piles and piles of dung. Unfortunately, no one works with dung. And many of these goshalas, you must know, are also quietly working as dairies. And it's a sad truth, but people are obsessed with dairy. When they see a cow, the first question they ask is, how much milk does the cow give? In Hindi, kitni doodh deti hai? So cow equals milk for them. There's no other way they can see the cow, you see. Which is why we want every goshala cattle shelter to start this project for themselves. This will also generate their own an economy that can sustain their expenses if well done.
I was listening to a podcast where they were interviewing the people who started a company called Seventh Generation in the US. And he said economics always is important in convincing people to buy your product. So if you tell the people who have the cattle shelter who on the sly are using the cow for milk, these are often cows which are abandoned because they're not giving enough milk or other issues.
Sometimes abandoned not because of enough milk. Sometimes they're just stray cows that get rescued by these people. There is a lot of good work happening. So what I'm trying to say is that I'm not saying all cattle shelters are like this, but like everywhere, there is definitely some cattle shelters are run very badly. Some of them are unscrupulous. Also, some of them are not, most importantly, even if run well, I feel they're not optimizing their resources that they have.
Do you think that it can be an economically viable alternative for the cattle shelters to be sustainable, economically sustainable?
Definitely.
So is that what you're proposing?
Yes.
Give me the economics. Like a liter of milk that a cow.
I'll tell you how it works. See, for a cow to give you milk, she's pregnant for 9 months and then she delivers. So for those 9 months, you earn nothing. You're just waiting for her to have the baby. And immediately after she's had the baby, the first 10 days or 15 days, the milk is too thick to sell. It's colostrum.
Right.
Which is also denied to the baby. It's sold to sweet shops. It's sold to make colostrum tablets. There's a business there also. From the time the calf is born, the person optimizes the earning, right? He doesn't want to give even 1 day off because he spent 9 months feeding that cow. The cow actually gives milk for about 8 months. The natural cycle for a calf to drink milk from his mother is about 7 to 8 months. By the time the calf is about a month and a half or 2, the calf starts to graze a little with the mother. That's how it happens. Just like human babies, where after a year we start to give them regular food, a bit, and then slowly they start eating everything and get off milk, and then you wean them. Similarly, by the 7th month, the calf is too big to continue feeding with the mother, and by then he's also become independent and he is really happy to eat his own fodder. In a dairy format, the calf is given nothing. If it's a female calf, they keep them on a survival diet because they need that calf to be the next generation in the dairy. If it's a male calf, they keep showing the calf to the mother because the milk drops in the udder instinctively. In India, that's what they do. After 15 days, then the cow starts to give good milk. That only lasts about 3 to 4 months. After that, the milk starts to wane.
Right.
In the start and when it's going to get over, the milk also becomes very thin. It's a biological process. And the mistake is that we've tried to make a huge business out of this, right? So then they give them hormones and all that to keep the milk going and everything. So the calf is taken away from the mother very, very early. And these calves all find themselves on the road. The way, in a sense, there's a tragedy in the way we romanticize stray cattle in India. Most of them are abandoned male calves. And it's a survival of the fittest kind of a scenario where that bull has survived somehow and grown into a thing, and he stays on the road. The other stray cattle that you see on the road are all small dairies who don't want to spend money feeding their cattle.
So, what are your next steps? Where do you see yourself in 2 years?
I haven't the faintest idea actually, but I think what we've now really begun to enjoy doing is bringing awareness to people about where their food comes from, where their milk comes from, how animals are treated. Our farm has become a great place for this narrative. And I'm able to not only talk about it, I'm able to show it. I'm able to show how regeneration can happen, how compassion can take place, how happily animals can live on the farm, how we can do dung instead of milk. So I think that there are so many narratives that are happening on our farm. It gives me great pleasure to be able to bring in school children, bring in families. There are lots of visitors on our farm and we hold workshops, we have farmers markets. So there's a constant communication, interaction, dialogue. And I think that's very, very crucial. It's not about just taking a stand, but it's about being able to understand where the problem lies and how we can solve it in a sustainable manner that is also economically viable. Like you yourself mentioned, economy is in the fulcrum. Is it the fulcrum of change? If I want to tell somebody to stop dairy, I need to give them an alternative. Otherwise, it's not going to happen, you see. So I'm very happy that we have accidentally created this. I really call it a happy accident because I didn't set out to do this. But as we started, so much has happened and I don't know where I'm going to be 2 years from now because of that. I hope I'm able to share more and more of this narrative and we do a lot of training for animal shelters, whatever we know. It's not like we are the last word. But whatever we have learned or whatever we are able to understand, we love to share and ask other people to start because there's so much work that needs to be done.
Thank you so much, Aparna, for coming on the show. I hope you have the same amount of energy going forward.
Thank you so much.
You're listening to Mindful Businesses with Vidya Iyer. If you're a creator of a mindful brand or would like to recommend a mindful brand to be featured on our show, send an email to info@mindfulbusinessespodcast.com. Subscribe and listen to us on your favorite podcast listening app. Remember to rate and review us. To learn more about this and our other episodes, check out our website, mindfulbusinessespodcast.com. If you learned a thing or two, share it with one friend. This is Vidya Iyer with Mindful Businesses.